and led into a deeper relationship with you. Grant, Lord, now that you would speak through me, that you might touch not only my heart, but the hearts of those who are your servants before you here and now. Do this in spite of me or through me. For this we pray. Amen. Have you ever been distracted? Perhaps a door blew open while you were trying to sing a hymn. Or perhaps you were watching something on TV, a game or a show, and somebody came into the room and reminded you that you had chores that needed to be done. Maybe you were at work and you were busy on a project and the phone just wouldn't stop ringing, or people wouldn't stop coming into your office to check in with you. Distractions are a part of our everyday life. They were a part of Jesus' life. And our story this morning is just one example of how Jesus met with distraction and how he overcame the distractions to accomplish God's purpose. Our story takes place right after last week's story. Jesus has preached in the synagogue there at Capernaum. He has healed the man who was possessed by a demon. And now he has gone home for the evening to Simon Peter's house, and his brother Andrew and John and James have joined them. And they arrive there at Simon's house, and Simon is concerned about his mother-in-law who has taken ill and has become bedridden with fever. And he talks with Jesus about it, and Jesus goes into the woman's room and finds her there, and he reaches down and takes hold of her hand and lifts her from the bed. And as she is lifted, the fever leaves her. And she feels so well that she feels up to fulfilling Jewish custom and to serving them, to wait on them for the rest of that night and the next day. As the Sabbath comes to a close and the sun goes down, we find out that the people, meanwhile, have been spreading news of what Jesus has been doing. And as the sun goes down, there begins to become knocks on Simon's door. And they open the door to find the entire town has gathered outside of the door, and they've brought with them their sick and their demon-possessed. And you could just almost see the people carried there on litters and on stretchers, and you can see the demon-possessed fighting and struggling against their friends as they try to break free and do their possession rituals or possession activities, if you will. And there's this moment where Jesus has compassion upon them, and he spends the rest of that evening healing the sick and casting out the demons before they can identify him as the Son of God. By the next morning, Jesus has gotten up and left before the sun had even rose. He snuck out of the house and out of the town and went to a secluded place to pray. By the time that Simon and James and John and Andrew wake up, Jesus is nowhere to be found within the house, and the people, no longer held back by the Sabbath, are there probably to have more healing and stuff, and everyone is searching him out, and there is no Jesus to be found. So the disciples set out to look for him. And after searching for who knows how long, they find him there in the secluded place, and Simon comes up to him and says, "Master, everyone is looking for you." And Jesus says to him, "Let us go to someplace else, to the nearby towns, that I may preach, for that is what I came to do." And so the disciples and Jesus set off. They leave Capernaum to the other towns in the Galilean region, and they begin to preach in the synagogues, and Jesus continues to cast out demons. You see, Jesus knew what his purpose was, his mission. That was always weighing heavily upon his mind. He had come to earth so that he might die and resurrect, that we might have eternal life and an opportunity at salvation. But to reach that goal, to get to that purpose and fulfill it, he would have to do a few things. Namely, he would have to get the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Essenes, the scribes upset at him enough that they would call for his crucifixion. Jesus' preaching did just that. Because as Jesus preached, he was able to clear up some of the misunderstandings that people had about what he as God had said as he gave the law and as the prophets spoke out about him. And if that wasn't enough alone for him to be considered preaching his mission, he also would expose the hypocrisy of the Pharisees and their flaws, and show how the Sadducees weren't quite as holy as they made themselves out to be. Which is what really angered them and led to his death. A healer and a man who could feed the people and cast out demons was not someone that would upset the Pharisees and Sadducees and the Essenes. Jesus could have done that for years upon years, and they wouldn't have cared. They would have dismissed him, maybe even celebrated him for what he could do, but until he started speaking out against what they said, they were not challenged by him. Jesus could have done the healing and the feeding and the casting out of demons from heaven. He did not need to be here to do those things. But correcting the misunderstandings and exposing the religious figures that were in charge of his faith was something that had to be done here. Dying and resurrecting was something that had to be done here in his mortal body and in the incarnation. So for all the good, all of the wonderful things that Jesus did with the feeding and the healing, he knew that they could not distract him from achieving his final mission, his purpose here on earth. To get to the cross and to resurrect from the tomb. As followers of Christ and as members of a church, we are called to hold the same purpose, the same level of mission before us at all times. It is not simply our job to heal the sick and feed the poor and cast out demons. While they are good and wonderful things, and while they are something that we should do, our purpose as a church and as Christians is to make believers and disciples of Jesus Christ. And that must be at the center and the forefront of all that we choose to do and how we act and live in this world. It is not simply good enough to be better people and to do the good deeds. We must be the people who inspire faith. There are many wonderful charities in the world, charities that feed the hungry, charities that clothe the naked, that house the homeless, charities that heal the sick. But there is only one church that can offer God and a relationship with Jesus Christ. And we are a part of that church. And we are called to live into that purpose. And all that we do, all of the feeding, all of the healing must be for the purpose of making disciples of Jesus Christ. Because that is what we uniquely have been tasked with. We are to hold on to the purpose. To learn from Jesus. And learn about how he did ministry. How he was able to do the good works, but more importantly, to inspire faith in the hearts of those who had yet to know God. May we mimic our teacher. May we be like our master. And may we be the people who share the good news of Jesus Christ, the gospel of the world, to all persons. Amen.